Welcome back to another episode of the Plutus Awards podcast. I'm your host, Chris Browning, and I'm thrilled to be joining you all here again. Our community is filled with hundreds of stories from creators and entrepreneurs just like you. And through this podcast, we plan to share these stories from bloggers to podcasters, writers, speakers, and more. So let's get down to it and meet today's guest.
Hi, my name is Lee Huffman. I'm the founder of baldthoughts.com, and I started my website in 2012. I do this because a lot of people can't afford to travel, and I like to be able to show people how to travel more, spend less, and live better through the power of airline miles and hotel points.
So a lot of people have chosen like a specific niche or area to focus into, which I think is really great for keeping your content kind of concise and having an area that you can just put all your effort and your research into. But when you focus in a specific area, sometimes it can be difficult to keep things fresh. So today, Lee, I want to talk to you because we go way back to a pickup game back in the hot heat of Dallas in 2017 at FinCon.
Exactly, yeah. It wasn't just a pickup game. We dominated it. I think we went actually undefeated when we were playing.
Maybe I wasn't on your team then, because I don't feel like I ever won.
Well, at least we played together.
We were in the same building, at least. Maybe you were beating me. That's what was going on. But either way, we've battled together. We've been there. So
absolutely.
I feel like I know you pretty well now at this point. And your focus that you've chosen is travel and rewards.
Yes.
And so I want to ask you, what made you, first of all, decide to focus in on that area?
I think part of it is like anything, like when you say that looking for a job, you find something that you love and then you're never going to work a day in your life, right? And so I love the travel and I love being able to kind of like, quote unquote win at it. And so being able to use miles and points allows me to, one, travel as much as I want and also be able to save all the money. That way I can use that money to invest and pay down debt.
Yes. And so did you stumble into this area? Like how did you even think about these travel rewards and things like that as a way to travel for cheap or free?
Well, long ago, I used to work in banking and I had a client who was a travel agent. And this was probably literally like 20 years ago. And he said, get a credit card that's of the airline and the hotel that you really like. And so I got the Southwest credit card and I got the SPG, which is now Marriott. I thought I was, rolling high, man. I was able to fly all over the US and be able to stay at different hotels. Then all of a sudden, my wife decided that she wanted to go to Paris. And it was like, well, baby, Southwest doesn't fly to Paris. So, and at that point, then I started really kind of digging in and looking into all the miles and points and realized that, wow, what I was doing was just barely scratching the surface. And I started looking into it and I realized that I was able to get all of us, my wife, me, my 26-month-old son, and my mother-in-law to Paris and back for basically for free. I think everybody, when they first start out, has those dreams like, oh man, I can make so much money. I can do this. I can do that. And, it's been 6.5 years and it's still not making a ton of money on it, but it's still doing all right. But I figure, you know what? At least I can do is instead of having to repeat myself with conversations all the time, at least now I can write it down and I can show people, say, look, just read this article. I'll show you how we did an XYZ trip and how you can save money on your next vacation.
And so, at this point now, you've been writing about this topic for years. Is it hard to keep things fresh? Is it hard to not feel like you're repeating yourself or like you're kind of stuck in a rut? Like, how's that process for you?
The good thing with travel and also the bad thing with travel is that things are constantly changing. Airlines and hotels, they're constantly updating their reward charts, the different programs, credit cards are coming out, credit cards are getting eliminated. So it's a lot different than actually the kind of like the personal finance side of things, right? Like the Roth IRA is the Roth IRA. It's been the Roth IRA for years. The only thing that really kind of changes with it is, the annual amount that you can contribute each year. A lot of the content on the personal finance side is static and it's kind of evergreen. Whereas on the travel side of things, really, unless it's like a review of a product or a hotel, it could be out of tune here within like literally a matter of days. Sometimes they have promos that last only maybe 3 days for like a flash sale. We're able to get like a really awesome trip from here, say from the US to Asia or Europe for a few thousand points. And that may only last for a couple of days. So you constantly have content that's going out of date.
Basically, this area that you're focused in, it has its own kind of like turnover to it that allows you to have something fresh to talk about because they're going to keep constantly changing the rules and the policies and the rewards and all these things that go along with it.
Absolutely. So it's either fresh content because you're having to update things as far as that goes, or you're going on a new trip. Now you have a new trip report as far as reviewing of the hotel, maybe a review of the flight, and some reviews of the attractions that you're doing.
So would you recommend people find, like, if they're going to find like a specific area they want to focus in, maybe make sure that area has something in it that has some change to it, something that I guess allows you to have updates you need to give and the content's evolving. So that way, maybe not something so specific that there is no way to kind of broaden it or I guess expand on what you're talking about once you've covered all the topics in a couple years.
Sure, sure. I mean, you got to find like maybe a happy medium there, right? Because you don't want to be so broad that basically you're not going to ever rank in Google for any of the search results. But also, you don't want to be, like you said, you don't want to be too niche down where all of a sudden, yeah, you've written about everything in maybe 30 blog posts, and then you're like kind of scratching the surface trying to figure out what are you going to write about next.
Okay. So, I mean, what are things that you've done to add some variety to what you're doing? I mean, I know you said the industry is kind of constantly evolving and changing, but have you branched out at all? What does that look like for you?
Well, I mean, like I say on the travel side, when I used to work in corporate finance for a bank, I would go on business trips. So there's a lot of business travel angles. Obviously now I have kids, so there's a lot more like the family side of things, being able to travel with as a family. Or one of the things I've been doing recently, the last couple of years, is doing solo travel with one of my kids. And so actually later on this month, we're recording in August, and so I'm getting ready to take my daughter to Belgium for a week, just me and her, and she's only 4 years old. So there's going to be a lot to write about there because 4-year-olds don't always listen to what you want them to do. And so it's going to be an interesting experience for sure.
Has that been something that you've been doing more and more of, is incorporating your family into your writing and your experiences?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, some people are, I think, kind of afraid of involving their family because, there are some less savory people out there on the internet, right?
Yeah.
So some people are they just come up with like pseudonyms for their kids' names. And you know what? I look at it as people are going to find you. If they really want to find you, they will find you on the internet. So I from day one, I've when we were naming our kids, I registered the domain names for them. So that way they have their domain names. I create email addresses for them, and every so often I send them pictures or just like little notes. But on the travel side, really I kind of looked at the niche of travel, and there's a lot of like moms that talk about traveling solo with their kids, but there's not a lot of dads doing that. And so one, I see that's a good niche to be able to really kind of dive into, to maybe inspire other dads to be able to travel solo with their kids. And then also it's just, to me, it's kind of a cool thing to be able to document those trips with my kids.
So it sounds like you kind of like stacking different niches on top of each other. Like you had like your travel reward side. Now you're doing like the traveling with your kids side of things. And that sounds like a cool way of finding like related areas that you can kind of like stick together. So that way, maybe if you picked a very narrow area in the beginning, maybe you can find a related topic that kind of flows with it and kind of start to expand out into different areas as you go along.
Yeah, absolutely. It's like you kind of think of those concentric circles, right? You don't want everything you're doing to completely overlap. And so maybe as you kind of branch out, there's going to be a little overlap, but maybe you're going to find new audiences.
So have you found that to be true, that you've brought in new people to like new readers as you've expanded into these different areas?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I have the blog, but also I launched the podcast a year ago. And so that it really doesn't talk about miles and points at all. And so that's really just another different audience that I can kind of tap into. My podcast is called We Travel There. And so what I do is I interview locals from around the world to find out the best things to do in their city. And Chris, you're one of the experts for Long Beach. So you're definitely happy to have you on the podcast. And so this way it's talking about those different cities, and it's bringing in new audiences. I'm tagging on social media some of the places that we talk about, the visitors bureaus, those type of things, and then linking back and forth between the blog for the podcast as well as my blog for the Miles and Points. So that way there's hopefully when people find one of the different articles, maybe they'll cross over to the other site.
No, that's a great idea, because since they're still related, they can kind of flow into each other. So if you come for one piece of content, you find something that's kind of related, and it may just move around your whole, I guess, almost like network of content that you've built up over the years.
That's for sure.
All right. So what we've been talking about so far has all been about travel. So I have to ask you, do you ever get burnout talking about travel? Do you ever get to a point where you're like, you know what? I don't want to talk about anything that's not about where I live right now.
No, I mean, I don't know. I get a little bit of FOMO when I see because I have a lot of different friends in different Facebook groups, and I see them traveling all over the place. Mm-hmm. And yeah, whenever I see them, I'm like, oh my God, I want to go there, and I want to go there, and I want to go there. But there are some times where I just, you know what? I just want to sit. I just want to sit on the couch this weekend, pop in some Netflix, and just relax. But I don't know. I get excited about talking about travel, talking about rewards, probably to the point where people just tell me to shut up, or they just kind of like, okay, well, I want to leave this conversation, but you won't let me, so So you got to try to kind of gauge that when you're talking to people in person and not overwhelm the conversation with like the fire hose of travel and miles and points and how excited you are about it.
That's a great point, because what I'm hearing from you when you're talking about this is that it sounds like it's very important that if you're going to pick a very specific niche to focus on, that it should be something that you're passionate about, that you actually truly enjoy. Like, don't pick a topic just because it's what's popular right now if you have no interest in it whatsoever, because it feels like you get very bored of talking about something that you don't like. Yeah. But if it's something that you truly enjoy, like how you feel about travel, it's easy to keep going and have that motivation just because it's something that you're going to enjoy, regardless if you're writing about it or not.
Sure. I mean, I'll admit, I freelance write for some other different websites out there talking about travel and credit cards and rewards. Some of the topics that I get on the assignments, I'm not that excited about them, But then I look at the amount I'm getting paid for, and I get excited again, But it's one of those things where you kind of make those trade-offs, right? Where you write about some stuff that maybe I'm not as excited about it, but it affords me the opportunity to be able to write about the things that I do like. So you make the best of it.
It's a trade-off. Like with any job, there's no way you're going to enjoy everything you're doing, but you push through the things that you maybe aren't your favorite to get to the things that you're going to truly enjoy. But you got to have those things you enjoy in there somewhere.
Absolutely. And then later on, as you further advance in your career and with your writing schedule and things like that, if a topic doesn't sound that exciting to you, forget about it. You don't have to write about it. You don't have to take that assignment if you don't need to. That's one of the benefits of working for yourself.
That's a great point. You don't have to do it. It's at this point, you're choosing the things that you enjoy. Because if not, you might as well just have a regular job then and do something that you don't like doing. If everything you choose is going to be something that you don't want to do.
Absolutely. But you also have to think of the thing where if you turn down too many assignments, they may just say, you know what, I'm going to find somebody else, or when you turn it down, kind of make a twist as far as what you like to talk about and see if you can maybe adjust the pitch. And that way it turns into something that you are excited about.
And the last thing I wanted to ask you, Lee, was what are some things that you've done to kind of maybe help lessen the load on yourself? So I think that can be part of the burnout experience, is taking on too much. And so are there any tools that you use to kind of help streamline the process so that way you don't feel overwhelmed or you feel like you're doing one thing too much? Or have you expanded your team? Anything you've done to kind of help with this process?
Yeah, I've done a couple different things. One, about a year ago, I took on a VA because trying to find that good work-life balance between working on the blog, working for other people, and then also spending more time with the family. So I'm able to try to offload some of those lesser brain-intensive tasks or things that you're able to document the process and have somebody kind of repeat that for you. So I've been doing that, and it's turned out okay. Actually, I'm in the process of finding a new VA because this one changed the rates on me, and so it's kind of time for it to find a new one, and that happens. And then also I use a lot of different tools to kind of automate some of the social media postings and other tools like that. So I use SmarterQueue is one of the ones I use. And so what I do is with that is there's multiple tracks that you can create. So when I write for other people, when those articles are published, then I try to give them a little social media love. That way, hopefully they'll give me more assignments, and I tweet out their articles. And then also my podcast and my blog posts, then I put them on different tracks as well. And so, for example, like with the podcast, what I'll do is I'll write out 3 to 5 different tweets for each podcast episode and have 3 to 5 different pictures that correlate with those tweets, and then have them go out on rotation. So even when I'm publicizing that same episode, I'm not pushing the same content out there. I'm not pushing the same verbiage. I'm not pushing the same picture. And that way, maybe if somebody didn't really click on it from the first time around, maybe that next time when they see that next picture, that next verbiage, they'll be excited and they'll want to click through to it. And again, like I mentioned earlier, I'm also tagging different restaurants or different attractions or different cities. And then also obviously tagging the guest. Hopefully at that point, they'll retweet it or they'll comment. And that way it gives you a little bit more social media love.
No, that's a great idea, because I've been using SmarterQueue as well. It's a great tool, but I don't think I've been using it as well as you're using it right now, because I like the idea of having that variety of posts, so that way people because I think if someone sees the same thing popping up over and over, it's probably easier to ignore.
Yeah.
But having that variety like you're doing gives them maybe a different opportunity. It looks a little bit fresher, and maybe they're more likely to click on it than if it was just the same thing kind of
absolutely
flowing through their feed all day every week. No, I really like that, because I think any tool you can use to help reduce some of the workload, I think can help with the overall stress, and I think feeling of I'm tired of doing the same thing, because if you can keep this on an automated cycle, you're not touching it anymore. And then plus the variety helps keep the content fresh and keeps it, not being the same thing repetitive
for sure,
post over and over and over again. So I think that's a great tip.
Yeah, and I'm a big fan of putting in more work at the beginning so that way I can be lazy later on.
Yeah. I like that. Hey, well, Lee, thank you so much for joining me here and sharing some of your tips on, just keeping things fresh and what it's like to work within a niche and adding some variety to it as well. And so if people want to catch up with you and maybe look into a little bit more what you're doing, get some more tips and some advice for you, what's the best place for them to reach out to you?
I'm most active on Twitter and Instagram with Bald Thoughts. That's my domain name, as well as all the different names on all the social media channels. And if you're interested in the podcast, it's called We Travel There, and it's the same name on all the different social media channels as well.
I appreciate you all coming back and supporting us here for another episode. And if you enjoyed what you heard today, make sure you're subscribed, because next week we'll be joined by Holly Johnson of Club Thrifty. When you subscribe, you'll get that episode and more from us here at the Plutus Awards podcast. You can learn more about our guests and the Plutus Awards podcast at plutusawards.com/podcast and on Instagram at Plutus Awards. Again, thank you so much for joining us, and remember to keep creating.